Hello, Andy.
Hello.
I
I'm
think
gonna
it's
take us off screen sharing so we can see people come
yep,
back on.
people are back. And we're going to go into the panel, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I hope everybody had a good break and got some coffee or water or tea or took the dogs out or whatever. I think this next panel is going to be very interesting. Talking about existing federally funded ocean research and management. We have Justin Ainsworth from ODF&W, Bob Cowen from the Hatfield Marine Science Center, Patricia Fox from South Slough Reserve, Jan Newton, the director of the Northwest Association of Networked Ocean Observatory Systems, and Lisa Phipps with the Oregon Coastal Management Program to talk about federally funded research and what's happening. Andy, did you have any other introduction before we turn it over to the panelists?
I think, Susan, maybe the framing that we discussed in the executive committee was trying to educate Oregon stakeholders and interests about the existing system that's in place and what's at risk if federal funding is significantly reduced. So that's the perspective we were hoping our guests would share and enlighten us as to kind of what the programs are that currently provide us with our suite of observing and management information. So thank you to all of our guests. Karina.
I'm not sure I see Jan here yet.
I don't see her yet either.
Yeah, okay. Just notice it.
Yep.
She may be very prompt and show up in 2 minutes.
That works too. So Andy, did you have any other slides besides this one or?
Nope, this is
Okay.
the one that I have to introduce us, and I can actually take it down when we have speakers, or I can leave it up and spotlight the speaker. So
Okay.
however you would prefer.
I don't know which of our panelists have presentations or not, but otherwise, I guess just start with Justin. I'd say leave the slide up unless he has something else to share,
Sounds good.
and then go down the list.
Okay, yeah, sure. Happy to get us kicked off. I don't have any slides prepared. Just wanted to go over a little bit of functions and some numbers and just to kind of set the stage. So first of all, just introduction. My name is Justin Ainsworth. I manage the Marine Resources Program of ODF&W. So I am going to be focusing on Marine Resources Program, or MRP. I can't speak for the whole ODF&W agencies, so just keeping it to our program that does most of our work in the ocean and in estuaries. Just to kind of start off, I think I just want to give a sense of the size of our program. We have about 75 permanent employees. During the summertime, we hire seasonal positions and well over 100 people. Biennial budget is around $25 million. The different kind of function work that we do is kind of, we categorize it into maybe 5 different categories. That includes marine licensing and program operations, marine fisheries management, marine resources policy and management, marine resource assessment, marine fisheries monitoring and data management. So all of those different categories are associated with our different fund types. So on a biennium, we're looking at about $25 million to run the program. And when we're looking at that breakdown of that $25 million, about, let's see, about 40% comes from licensed dollars. So these are fishing licenses. Also in commercial fisheries revenue, permits, licenses, and ad valorem. So that's about 40%. Our federal funding is about 26% of our total budget for the Marine program. So looking at our last full biennium, our federal dollars were about $5.8 million. So if I were to look at that $5.8 million of federal money, break it down a little bit more for you, the largest portion of that federal dollars is to be under our monitoring. So this is most of our monitoring for our fisheries, collecting data from recreational and commercial fisheries. And resource assessment is another 12%. So that's about $700,000 per biennium. So resource assessment, what that includes is, conducting and supporting stock assessments, habitat assessments, designing harvest strategies that are, for sustainable fisheries. And then again, another portion of that federal dollars that contributes to the program is about 25% of the federal dollars to our program is for fisheries management. So fisheries management, as you can imagine, this group is responsible for fisheries policy development, public engagement and regulations, in-season management, marine fisheries. So this includes our state managed fisheries, regional fisheries that we work on through the Pacific Fishery Management Council, also the North Pacific Fishery Management Council. Fisheries management also includes international participation through PFMC and the International Pacific Halibut Commission. So in these federal dollars that come into ODF&W, as I mentioned, in a biennium is about 25% of our budget, $5.8 million last biennium. About 80% of that is through continuing grants. So these are grants that come to us typically on an annual basis, usually through the National Marine Fisheries Service, to support all of those different activities. So those activities could be, monitoring the recreational fisheries, commercial fisheries, like shrimp and groundfish. So about 80% are continuing. Some of these grant programs we've had for about per decade, some of them for like 40 years, for example. And then the other 20% of grants coming in from the federal government are what are more like the competitive grants that that we would apply for doing different kinds of surveys or from our research needs. So and what people mostly think of when they think of a federal grants. So at this point, in terms of the question at hand, impacts the federal funding. Most of these grants are in the middle of agreements. At this point, not seeing any major impacts, reductions of the grants that are supporting this work. We are expecting competitive grants to be harder to come by, but we don't know exactly what that impact will be. I think the biggest impacts that we are seeing right now is the work that we do with federal partners, whether that be our work through the Pacific Fishery Management Council process, that people that have either been laid off or taking early retirement, so they just reduce capacity of some of that work. We're aware of several positions at National Marine Fisheries Service that have been reduced or early retirements that will affect our participation on developing strategies around whale entanglement and reducing them. And these processes include our take reduction team, which is a regional process to address whale entanglements in crab fisheries and sablefish fisheries. So we're the federal employees that are involved in them, with fewer of them available. So we're concerned about those impacts. So I guess just in summary, just a lot of indirect impacts to our agency right now. So but that's kind of the intro that I wanted to provide about our overall budget, just really quickly, and impact of federal funding.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Yeah, I know you and I talked about budgets a while ago, but the numbers that you broke down, I thought was really interesting. And my dog's barking, so I'm gonna go on.
Justin, is there any concern that those continuing grants are at risk, or what is the process for renewing those? Are they really just open-ended, or is there any concern that some of that more significant pot of funding could be at risk, or has there been any indication?
Yeah, thanks for that question. That is a concern. It would just be kind of speculation at this point if they would be affected. We haven't heard any direct word that some of the grants that we have been receiving year after year after year. So whether they be impacted or not, hard to say. These grants, like I mentioned, most of that is going toward monitoring of the fisheries. Most of the fisheries have are federally managed species, so monitoring salmon catch and groundfish catch, and so those are necessary data points from the the federal perspective. So in a sense, the state's kind of a contractor collecting data for federal fisheries. So we're hoping that those aren't as impacted as some of the other grant programs are. So, Karina?
Yeah, I had a question, Justin. Which agency do those funds flow from? Commerce, NOAA?
Almost all of the ones for our continuing grants are through National Marine Fisheries Service.
Yeah.
They come through the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission as a kind of a in between, but yeah, most of them are National Marine Fisheries Service.
Just curious because of all the changes being proposed for, those line offices within NOAA and what that means, like the proposed movement to U.S. Fish and Wildlife for nymphs. And anyway, just pointing out that there are these movements and things going on, and the need to get Secretary Lutnick's approval for grants over 100,000 on contracts that have been impeding other things. So just
sure, yeah, that would be impactful if the agency did move, and also as you pointed out, the higher level of approvals that are required now is certainly causing some delays, and we're anticipating more delays and confirming that the grant money is available.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay, we might have more questions at the end, Justin, so we may come back to you. Let's see, next up, Bob Cowen. Are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Bob Cowen. I'm the Associate Vice President for Marine Research Operations at Oregon State University and the Director of the Hatfield Marine Science Center. I'm going to start off by saying I'm an optimist, and keep that in context of what I'm going to say, I guess. Opening is, I think science is in peril. We're already experiencing serious damage, and we need to think seriously about how we're going to be addressing this. And this discussion is one of the important starts of this. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the local impacts that we're already experiencing at Hatfield. As a little background for everyone, we have not only the Oregon State University side of operations, that's about 220 people. We also have 5 state and federal agencies, which together encompass about another 200 people. Mostly scientists and research support staff. Already at these different agencies at Hatfield, we have experienced around 12 to 16 firings, or the people who have taken the early retirement option. And we're bracing for probably another 10, possibly as many as another 15 still to come. We're seeing significant program loss, whole labs being potentially closed. In fact, most likely with the US EPA lab. We're seeing programs within NOAA being targeted. One really important area to all of us is on some of the institutes, Oregon Sea Grant and our Cooperative Institute, both NOAA funded, combined supporting tens of millions of dollars in marine and coastal research, areas of interest such as sustainable fisheries, resilient communities, climate science, ocean acidification, food security. These programs are seriously under concern as about funding. Their fiscal year 25 funds are not even confirmed yet, and we're over 6 months into the year, and they've been zeroed out in the president's skinny budget for fiscal year 26. At our university side, the PI level, funding levels from NOAA, from the National Science Foundation, from NASA, NIH, these levels are being targeted for serious cuts. NSF, for example, a cut of almost 50%. And yet these are the very funding agencies that are supporting the science that is the innovation generators for all of us, for our whole country. But we're seeing those impacts right here. Some of our PIs have already had some of their work cut, specific research topic-oriented cuts. They've been told to stop their research. Others are very worried and concerned that that'll happen. One of the things that came out just last week, which is very concerning, is at the university level, all universities across the US, the proposal to cut the F&A rates, facilities administration rates, or overhead, down to 15%. Just for OSU alone, that would be a reduction in over $40 million per year. And importantly, I think people don't fully understand what these overhead rates pay for. There are such things as the libraries, the research libraries that the universities maintain, all the secure data storage, internet communication, high-speed computing, just the basic utilities of running these laboratories, all the required regulatory compliance for finance and security and grant management, all those personnel are supported by this. Even the janitorial staff for maintaining keeping the laboratories clean. Safety training, hazardous waste disposal. These are the things that are supported by these F&A rates, and to drop it down to 15% from a system that was set up in the early 50s by Congress explicitly to support these sorts of things through F&A rates. This change is dramatically going to affect our ability to support the research that needs to be done. Even at larger scale impacts we're seeing, and the effects of this is we're losing rank and file personnel. And as Justin just mentioned, this is affecting the rate at which things get done. The rate at which a grant application is passing through NSF has already been severely slowed down. So the continuity of funding for a laboratory is really critical to keep your trained personnel. This is a big loss. We're also losing senior leadership, and that years of experience that would be helping us to get through these sorts of events. And at the other side, the workforce training side, the next generation of scientists are not going to have as many graduate student opportunities if our research is cut in half. And just entering into a graduate training program when you're not sure if there are going to be jobs there is worrisome. So You know, science is definitely under attack. And I think currently all of our coastal and marine research is conducted by a tight collaboration of the agencies, NGOs, and university scientists, and in commingled and leveraged funding. And you know, Sea Grant and Simmers are great examples of this. The university relationship with like ODF&W and the research that's done there are great examples of this. But these cuts are going to cripple this partnership and the crucial research that it's doing. So I do, you know, I'm a little bit on a soapbox because I'm having to deal with this on a daily basis. But I yet to see a grand organizing plan to counter this, to explain why this is not a wise move. And we're all responsible for this. Universities and individuals need to coalesce to come out with a unified, loud voice. Advocacy is only going to work if someone's out there listening, and to get them to listen, we need to find new ways to communicate the messages. We need to make the message relevant so they understand and not fall back on our scientific terms. That's just not going to cut it. Francis Chan, the director of Simmers, has done a nice set of short videos called Coastal Voices, where the people who are directly impacted by and realize the value of the science, for example, the fishermen who realize that we need to have good measurements of their catches so that they can be predicting the next year's catch, so it's more sustainable in how we manage it. We also need to change the messaging from the science perspective to jobs lost, to the earnings, to the profits that are being lost, and get the key industry leaders who rely on our science products. We need them to help be part of getting this message out to the public, so they understand what the return is on this investment. If the public's investing in all the science we're doing, we need to help them understand it. As an individual, particularly as a scientist, don't be so cautious when discussing the impact of your work. You know what it is, but we get lost sometimes in the, staying within our 5% confidence limits, or 95%. And if you're talking about something like climate science, focus on adaptation and mitigation, not on the political hot topics like causation. We really need to be getting this messaging out. These cuts that are happening, especially the F&A rates, we need the state to help step up and support our universities to sustain this research support backbone. Without it, a lot of the other efforts are going to be hampered anyway. And we need to plan and work with all this of addressing things and worry about what's coming. I think not only do we need to be nimble, but we also do need to be planting seeds for the recovery when it does come. And so reacting now, getting the messaging across, but also in lieu of what might be coming is to sort of pay attention to what we might need to have in place so that we can recover when the opportunity comes. So again, I'm sorry if I'm preaching, but I just, as I said, I'm living this daily. So I'm wanted to make sure everyone understands the scale of what is impacting. This is just right here along our coast, and it's happening everywhere across this country.
No, I think that is exactly the kind of information. It's the kind of information I was looking for when the executive committee started talking about this. With what Justin mentioned, and I was not aware of like the F&A rates. I had no idea, but wow, it's more shocking than I even realized. So I appreciate the talk value. It's scary to me personally. but it's also a lot of good information I didn't know before. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say. Does anybody else have comments, or Bob, were you gonna say something else?
Yeah, I meant to put one thing in that context of $40 million loss. That's over 300 people, 350 people. That's
Wow.
a major, and that's supporting the research engine. So it's significant.
It is. It is. Wow. Okay, questions for Bob? Like I say, hang around because we may have questions for you coming back. So
Certainly.
really good information. Scary, but good information. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody right away. I did want to draw your attention to the chat. Karina put in the videos that they mentioned. A link to the videos are in the chat, so thank you for that. And Patricia Fox, are you with us today? Are you on
I
here?
am. Good afternoon,
Awesome.
everyone. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me
Welcome.
okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Bob, I can empathize. So my name is Patricia Fox. I'm the reserve manager at the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve. And I'm sure with this audience, many of you already know, but the reserve system is a setup of 30 reserves throughout the nation. And South Slough happened to be the oldest. It was number one in NOAA's network. So we were established in 1974. But these research reserves across the nation studies more than 1.3 million acres of estuarine systems. And for South Slough, we manage about 7,000 acres of natural area. That includes open water channels and tidal and freshwater wetlands, riparian areas. And then we have a lot of uplands as well, so forested areas. But what this means to us is the research reserves primarily have a partner. Either it is a university or it is a state agency. And for South Slough, that state agency is the Department of State Lands. Luckily for us, state lands is not heavily generally funded and actually has a source of their own funds. But South Slough is a separate appropriation outside of DSL's operating budget. So DSL in recent years has been about a 50% match, helping us with our operating costs. But 50% of our operating costs have been coming from NOAA. So as of like last year, that would have been nearly $881,000. Now, of NOAA money, of that budget that we get from NOAA, about 90% of that goes to my personnel. So without people, you lose your programs. We have 22 people on staff right now. There's a couple vacancies in addition to that we have not filled. But losing that personnel means you are losing the programming. Our core programs are research, stewardship, and education. And you're also losing the long-term data. We have 30 years of water quality monitoring data. We have 15 years of salt marsh vegetation data, 21 years of eelgrass data. All of that data could be disrupted, and that lends to all of the research that you all are part of in this state and as well as nationally. So in terms of our other programming, we've got just last year, we had through field trips over 126 classes that impacted almost 1,400 students within this state. We had, and we do K through 12 and beyond. We have high school interns, college interns, post-grad, mentorship. We have community programming and recreation that we are entrenched in our local community. South Slough really is like the treasure that people bring their kids to. They remember their kids coming to summer camp. And then later, oftentimes will intern when they get much older. So you're really losing a part of the treasure of this community. You're also losing a lot of the research. I think that not just thinking about scientifically, but the local economy. I keep trying to draw the tie that South Slough and these estuaries have to our economy. One of the biggest research projects we've been working on is researching the invasive five-spine green crab. That is decimating a lot of our Dungeness crab populations and our oysters, local oysters. Losing that research and losing our ability to manage that will have a direct impact on our fishing industry. It will have a direct impact on our ports if we don't have healthy water and we don't have healthy habitats and ecosystems in place. Not only will it impact fish population for the fishing industry, but also our tourism dollars for recreation. It really is getting at the heart of really Oregon's entire coast, is a lot of the research that we do or that we support. So for us, it comes down to people, and people equals programming. And we do a lot at the South Slough with very little staff. So when I think about the cuts that are possible directly impacting personnel, it is pretty hard to imagine, and it will have a long-lasting impact, a long-lasting effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. And again, just wow. Just hearing about some of these cuts is staggering. And ugh. Okay. I could go on, but are there any other OPAC members who have a question or comment? And again, hang around because we may get some at the end of the panel.
Yeah, I'd like to comment later,
Jamie.
but I definitely want to comment on at least two of these.
Okay, at the end or now? At the end, okay. Karina.
I could wait, but I just want to point out, like, Bob was talking about the ecosystem between the agencies and the university scientists, and there's also an ecosystem. I work very closely with the Oregon Sea Grant works very closely on a variety of projects with SNR, as we call it, the South Slough NER. And so, and similarly with other programs in the state. So it's this connective tissue that is going to be really hard to replace and rebuild. Anyway, thank you for letting me say that.
Nope, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Jan Newton from Nanus. Is she online?
I am. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hey, welcome, Jan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here and join this panel. I'm a bit of a visual person. Would it be okay if I shared some slides?
You should be able to share. Just go to the share screen button and it's yours. Yep.
Yeah.
There you are. I'm seeing your screen, Jan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I wanted to introduce a bit about what Nanus is and does, and also to talk about what will be lost if these cuts continue, or if these cuts are enacted. So Nanus is part of the United States Integrated Ocean Observing System. IUS just celebrated its 25th anniversary. Nanus is about 21 or 22, I can't quite remember. We were set up IUS was formulated to be similar to the National Weather Service as a service that would provide people with coastal data. And so the value proposition of IUS is a bit unique in the sense that it starts with the user and figures out what is the ocean observing that you need in order to give people what they want in terms of information or data to solve problems. And so this is Nanus by the numbers. We are implemented by 6 organizations, including Oregon State University, the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, DOGAMI out of Oregon, the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries, and then also the Oregon Department of State Lands. And Kim, great to meet you. We help to fund the South Slough NERS for some of their observing assets, for particularly the real-time linkage. And so that connected tissue that Karina was saying is just so strong. And in fact, we are just working to get funds to share an outreach person between Oregon Sea Grant and NANUS. We have about 20 PIs, but the beauty of this picture is our member organizations. We have about over 70, but as you can see, they're from a lot of different places, organizational types. These are on our governing council, and there is an elected executive committee with which Andy Lanier serves to guide NANUS and to decide on priorities for the work we do. You can see the issues are the clouds, and they're primarily maritime operations, ecosystems, and then coastal hazards. What we are known for as an observing system is maintaining, whether they're buoys or gliders or floats in the, or you can see those dots, assets. We serve way more than what we support, because we have built community and people say, this is great, can you serve these data or these data products? And so we've spent a lot of time getting stuff in the water, also getting forecast models. I'm not going to go into that, but also a data explorer that allows people to visualize and download data. And in this case, this is comparing an OOI mooring in, this is in Washington, they're also in Oregon, with a forecast model, live ocean. So you can compare the blue line with the red forecast model line, and for a variety of variables, including ocean acidification variables and phytoplankton. So we've spent a lot of time with that, but we realized that early on that could be overwhelming. So primarily what we focused on is user-driven products. And before I share those products with you and talk about the impacts, when we learned that from the leak that the IUCE program regional effort would be eliminated, I put the item on the left there. Because NANUS is funded 100% federally, I cannot lobby. And so what I can do is inform people about what is at stake. And so I don't expect you to read what that is. It is on our website. But I also want to draw your attention to the IUCE Association and their website, because they are a nonprofit that can use some of their resources for lobbying. And they have made things like the ones you see here, supporting the restoration of America's maritime dominance and the restoration of America's seafood competitiveness. It's so frustrating for me as a director of an IUCE regional association. There's one of 11 that make up the entirety of our nation, to be reading executive orders that talk about safety at sea and economic power and seafood competitiveness, making sure that we're supporting aquaculture and fisheries, when that is our very DNA and what we have been doing for 20 years, and hearing that we're going to be eliminated. So with the remainder of my time, I'd like to kind of walk you through some of these things that will go dark if the cuts happen. So we have coastal radars that track surface currents that can increase the efficiency and accuracy of search and rescue operations, as well as identify and guide safe routes for navigation. And in each of these examples, I'm showing you our user thing. This is actually called NVS CCast, that was started by students working through Oregon Sea Grant, and then made into an app on the NANUS website, and it exists autonomously, CCast now. But what's really important in each of these slides I'm going to share with you is the quote, because that is from a real person. I look at it every time I go out and depend on the information to get me where I need to go and get me back safely. Tsunami evacuation. We've spent an awful lot of time working with this DOGAMI, and DOGAMI has worked with the Washington Department of Ecology to have maps that then can be used to tell people evacuation routes. The quote, by using the app, we're improving our preparedness for evacuation routes, and without it, we'd be a step behind. And kudos to DOGAMI for their leadership on this. Shoreline protection, again, this was great because there you see ecology. This one's Long Beach, but I should have got one from Oregon. It would have had Dogami's logo. Coastal erosion is a major threat in our county. The monitoring supported by NANUS, partially supported, we are augmenting what the state is doing, has helped us solve many of our immediate erosion and flooding threats, adding greater resilience. Navigation and ports. Again, we're talking to the navigators. This is Maritime Operations app. The Captain Dan Jordan from the Columbia River Bar pilots have told us that the Columbia River Bar is one of the most dangerous bars to cross in the world. This quote is from him. We rely on forecasts, real-time buoy data, and wave and current models. NANUS provides an excellent location for us to see and compare all the available data. And that's what we really try to do, is be that connective tissue that is allowing people to visualize not just models, not just surface currents, not just buoy conditions telling us wave height, but all of those together so that then people can make informed decisions. Seafood competitiveness. We have a long history of working with shellfish growers and a shellfish growers app that they helped design. Working with Whiskey Creek shellfish operations and Mark Weigert when he was alive. He gave a great quote. He said, putting an I-use buoy is putting in the water is like putting headlights in the car. It helps us to see where we're going. And this quote is from Margaret Polaro, the Pacific Coast Shellfish Growers Association Executive Director. This current generation of shellfish farmer is reliant upon data and services from NANUS. Fishing commerce support. One of our first specialized application was the tuna fishers app, which now we call the fishers app, because salmon fishers have said, oh, could you do one for us? So there's selections. You can select the water temperature that tuna like or that salmon like. This has been completely formulated by the fishing community in Oregon and Washington. This is simply sea surface temperature, but it's optimized for where you would find those fish. And it's combined with those surface current vectors that allow people to plot a route. And this excellent, we just had a webinar on that. This quote was what was in the chat. This excellent product benefits sport and commercial anglers directly, letting us be more effective and safe at the same time. This is what good government looks like, and we need to protect these services. This is from an Oregon resident and fisherman. Public health safeguarding. We work with ORHAB partners that have been in existence for even longer than NANUS has to make sure that they're partially funded through the IUS program office for the Pacific Northwest Harmful Algal Bloom Buoy, bulletin, not buoy, bulletin. And the value of early risk is so important for the health of residents, but also consider the risk. If you don't close a beach, someone could die. If you do close a beach and you didn't need to, then you're going to lose revenue. So having the best forecast warning that takes together the samples as well as the model forecasts has been really successful. Technological innovation. This is a device that sits there in the ocean and it's a little mini robot, and that graphic is showing you the actual toxin that is deployed right now. And you could go on to NANUS and see how much domoic acid is out there, and then that gets incorporated into the bulletin. And there's another little cool lightfish thing that's going to go around and take water samples, and we're working with the folks out of Newport and Maria Kavanaugh to get the IFCB samples of the toxins. Also working with the Oregon fishing fleet, who are taking water samples as well. And lastly, recreational safety on the water. This is from Captain Margaret Palmert. She says, NANUS addresses a critical gap in recreational boater safety. I'm confident it will save lives. This app, the Boaters app, allows people to plot their route and figure out the conditions and get safely home. So with that, I'll stop. And it was great when you mentioned the videos, the wonderful videos that Francis has made. For our 20th anniversary, I said, let's make a video, but not our words. Let's have people write in and give us a little video clip of what Nanos means to them. The link is there. It's on the videos if you go to our website. Well, that video is 20 minutes long, and it's because I didn't want to cut anybody off. And it's not a great video because who wants to watch 20 minutes? But my pitch here to you all is that these are really important things that are directly intersecting society. You know, so often we say, well, as scientists, we're not good at talking about the relevance of what we're doing to society. This is really the nexus where that comes together. And the 20 some odd principal investigators that we're partially supporting have been great at stepping up to help us make those linkages. So with that, I say thank you.
Thank you. Again, just wow. I learned some things about Nanos that I did not know. And just the shock at what we could lose is scary. So, any other quick questions before we move to our last panelists? Okay. And I don't have it in front of me. Lisa Phipps. I should have known better. Lisa, welcome again.
Yes, thank you. So just in case anyone came on late, I'm Lisa Phipps. I'm the manager of the Oregon Coastal Management Program and the Ocean and Coastal Services Division within the Department of Land Conservation and Development. At the risk of repeating some of the things that have been said in front of me, I'm probably going to do that to really put an emphasis on how important all of this is. So the Oregon Coastal Management Program is actually a network of 41 cities and counties on the coast and 11 state agencies. DLCD is one of those agencies and acts as the administrator of the program. And as a result, the coastal management funding comes to the department to fund the staff component of the network that provides the coordination and the leadership for the team. We have been in existence for almost 50 years. We were the second program in the nation to be approved. The state of Oregon was only behind Washington. The authorities that fund this program and that manage this program are through the Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972, which is implemented by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which we all know at this point is certainly within the sights of the current administration. It is particularly vulnerable because the agency was established through an executive order, which makes it vulnerable to the whims of an administration. It is not necessary to go through Congress to make changes to NOAA. However, the Coastal Management Program is in statute within the Coastal Zone Management Act. So in that way, it is protected differently from the agency. The Coastal Management Program really touches everyone that you've heard today. We partner with everybody that's spoken already. We coordinate the efforts at the state level of our network partners to ensure that we are implementing the goals and the missions of the Coastal Management Program, which are really intended to preserve and conserve our ocean and coastal resources, but also to find that balance in creating resilient and healthy, vibrant coastal communities. And as a result, there are a lot of cross connections between what we do and the economic health of communities, the social health of communities, the general well-being of the people within those communities are all affected by what work happens through the Coastal Management Program. The reason it sits with the Department of Land Conservation and Development is really because of the Oregon's approach to land use planning and the establishment of the 19 statewide planning goals. with the last 4 being focused on coastal resources. So we have goals 16 as estuaries, 17 as shorelands, 18 as beaches and dunes, as 19 as ocean resources. And it is those 4 that underpin the coastal management program in the state. In the state of Oregon, every state agency has to create plans that are in compliance with local comprehensive plans and ordinances because they implement the statewide planning goals. The other piece about the coastal management program in the state of Oregon is that it is unique in the size of our program. Not only do we have the network of state agencies, which is common, and that is how most of the coastal management programs function, but we have also brought in our 41 cities and counties along the coast. That is not normal. And as a result, we have given those communities a voice that otherwise would not be heard. And where it comes out most strongly is in one of the carrots, depending on your side of the table you're on, or hammers that the coastal management program has, which is its federal consistency reviews. Without a coastal management program, we begin to lose our ability to ensure that federal actions are reviewed against our enforceable policies. This is called federal consistency. And that means that every action that a federal agency undertakes, whether it's issuing a permit or doing the activity itself, has to be consistent with, in our case, our statewide planning goals, state statutes, rules, and local comprehensive plans, land use comprehensive plans, and ordinances. The scale of these projects can have significant positive or negative effects on coastal communities' economies, their social needs, and more importantly, their resiliency. The federal consistency program is a cornerstone and it protects the state and coastal communities' interests. So some large projects that maybe some of you have heard of would be the project called Jordan Cove down in Coos Bay, offshore wind, any impacts within our estuaries and offshore in our territorial seas fall under federal consistency reviews. These projects can be very complex, they can be very controversial, and sometimes the federal consistency arm of the process makes the difference between something moving forward or not. And the values that we can bring to the table are the values of the state and our coastal communities. As you know, we implement the state's territorial sea plan. We are the administrators of that, and we staff you all. And that is a statutory function that the coastal management program plays. We provide technical assistance to coastal communities around coastal hazards, all of the coastal hazards, around the TSP implementation, around all the work done in estuaries, from estuary management plan updates to dealing with blue carbon and natural and working lands and in the carbon conversation. We help communities through complex and controversial land use actions. And we are a coordinating body. We bring people to the table. We bring the state and local jurisdictions together to talk about local and regional issues. We provide opportunities for technology transfers in a dynamic field of coastal resilience. We create collaborations with our 5 coastal tribes, federally recognized coastal tribes, the agencies and the counties and cities, and we implement the legislative mandates that require work that supports coastal communities through the statewide coastal planning goals. Our funding is primarily through Section 306 of the Coastal Zone Management Act that provides the capacity funding and covers 11 of the 16 staff that we have in the coastal program within DLCD. We are almost primarily covered by federal funds. There's a small pot in Section 309 of the Coastal Zone Management Act as well that provides some support that is focused on projects that create programmatic changes around policies, for example, that move the dial on coastal resource issues. And of those 11, we have 3 that have received a small amount of state funded general fund because of the overlap of their positions with positions that are similar in the rest of Department of Land Conservation and Development. Primarily, those are regional reps. So we have 7 regional reps. 2 of them live in our program, and so they are considered to be positions that would be there whether or not we were there. And so there's a small amount of funding that comes towards them, but a small amount of funding. So if we lose our funding wholly, we lose 11 staff of the 16. The other 5 staff, 2 are associated with offshore wind, are funded by the state general fund under House Bill 4080. And then we have 3 other staff who are funded by projects. So EVA, who you heard from today, is funded under a project of special merit, and those dollars are only available to coastal management programs. Those dollars would be lost, and projects like the ones EVA is carrying forward would no longer be able to be moved forward. We have another person under the bipartisan infrastructure law who is only funded because coastal management programs were given a small pot of money out of the bipartisan infrastructure law to fund capacity to implement the habitat restoration grant program that was established under NOAA through the BIL funds, only available to coastal management programs. That funding is whole for the next 2 years. It was supposed to be for 5. We know we will not get the 5th year of funding. The 3rd person is funded, and the 5th person is funded through a NIFWIF grant, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and they receive federal funds. So their funding is actually federal as well, but it's a bit of a pass-through, and so it has a slightly different flavor to it. But that is also project specific, and that funding will end in this July. So the core, the heart of the coastal management program are these 11 people, and the work that they do has touched everyone in this program. Everyone who spoke today has worked with someone on my staff, and they are such a resource to this state. NOAA, through the Office of Coastal Management, is going to be severely impacted. We've lost some folks through the voluntary early retirement, some retirements in general. But we have been told to expect that NOAA as a whole will be slashed by 50% of its staffing component. There's some conversation as to whether or not that will include folks who've already been let go through the first reduction in force. If that is the case, that's fine. If that is not the case and that is not included, then it could be as high as 70%. We also know that their budget generally is being slashed. We anticipated back in March that we were to plan for a 5 to 10% reduction in the coastal management grants through the continuing resolution that was passed to cover FY25, which for us kicks off in July. We've received strong signals that the program could actually be zeroed out. We will find out in the next week or so. We were supposed to find out April 28th. Now we're anticipating sometime in the next week, where we will see what NOAA's spending plan is going to be, excuse me, and what's going to go in front of the committees for Congress to approve for this current fiscal year. We've also seen the president's budget, which recommends zeroing out coastal management programs for FY26. In the world of positivity, there's some thought that Congress will step up and fulfill their job, looking at all of the different programs and perhaps not follow blindly the president's proposed budget. I'm not necessarily of the mind that we'll see that level of step up given how we've seen the House move forward with the president's proposed budget and starting to get ready for those conversations. There's an expectation that the budget will not be passed in September. that we could see it go into December with a continuing resolution and potentially longer, much like this past year. So it is dire. It is scary. You say to yourself, what can we do? There's so many programs. There's so many people affected by this. There's so many people in this state because the state's 30% of its budget is tied to federal funds. So we're going to see a lot of cascading effects coming down as this current fiscal year goes into effect for a lot of programs. And what can the legislature do about it at this time? Well, fortunately, we're mostly going to find out before the session is over. So there's going to be opportunities there to reach out to our legislature and talk about the importance of a variety of programs. And we hope that the Coastal Management Program and everyone else that you've heard from today is included in that conversation. We are currently initiating an appeal to partners to ask for folks who believe in the Coastal Management Program and the value that it brings to the state to sign on to a support letter that the Coastal States Organization has pulled together and is soliciting letters of support from all 34 states and territories with coastal management plans. And we can certainly provide that link to you if you didn't already receive an appeal from us. We will be sending a letter from the governor's office, we hope, from Sea Grant and the South Slough. We're joining together as the part of the three. It's really a multi-legged stool, but in the course of the letter, it's the three-legged stool. We all start to fall apart when one of us is weakened, and in this case, all three of us could be. And then reaching out to your congressional delegation, we have both the pleasure and the challenge of having a congressional delegation that is very supportive of all things coastal. So on one hand, yay, they're there, they're advocating for us. On the other, their influence is somewhat weakened in the current administration. And so what we need them to do is reach across the aisle to those other coastal states who also receive a lot of benefits from their coastal management programs, their Sea Grant programs, from their National Estuarine Research Reserve programs, and bring them together to come forward with a united front about the value that these programs bring to all of the states. And so there's ways it may feel a little hopeless, but it's not. But as I believe it was Bob said, we all have to come together as a united front and talk about, and not be afraid to talk about, the value that these programs bring, the value of science, the value of community, the value of resiliency, the value of coordination, the value of data. All of these pieces are so integral into how we function on the coast, and we need to be loud and strong and together. So I could talk for about 2 years on this topic. I'm living it every second right now, and I appreciate you letting me take extra time, Susan, because I know that we kind of took over your agenda for the last few minutes. So I apologize.
No, that's okay. I mean, all of this is important. So I totally good with that. I see. Thank you very much, Lisa, for that. I see Andy put in the CSO sign-on letter link in the chat. And Karina put a link in the chat to the Sea Grant letter, sign-on letter, and that also has a cool map of Sea Grant supporters. Yay. So that's all in the chat. Let's see if we can take a couple questions, and then we will just figure out the rest of our agenda. But like I said, I think this is important. So happy to take the time. Jamie, followed by Amelia.
Bob, you started off by saying you're an optimist. I'm with you. However, after listening to all of you, it is dire, and unfortunately, we're dealing with a population that does listen, not necessarily to science, and certainly Congress is in that realm, and most certainly this administration is scientifically illiterate. and they having public input on what we can feed them, as Bob mentioned, and get their testimonies on what's affecting them, I think is most effective. The coastal management program has fed me since I've been in this town. I moved here from Idaho, became a teacher. South Slough has been essential, is on their commission now on OPAC. We'll serve on the Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan revision. So it is near and dear and part of my life. And so I am committed with that and to that effort. I have no idea if OPAC can weigh in on this, being an advisory to the governor's office, but perhaps we can somehow add our perspective of how difficult it's going to be in the next several months. Anyway, thanks for coming today and giving us this information.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. I know I've been thinking about some ideas just in my mind on what OPAC could do with this information. So we can discuss that once we get some more questions out of the way. And once we get an idea of where we want our agenda to go. So Jamie, I appreciate everything you said, very pertinent, and keep some of those thoughts going. Amelia.
Hi, thanks to all of the panelists for that incredibly important information, which is staggering and devastating to hear at the same time. I guess I wanted to just say a little bit more about the safety piece from a recreational standpoint, as we have more people on the coast and there's different forms of recreation, making ocean recreation more accessible to different people. There's a huge need for different forms of safety support. There's local community efforts here on the Central Coast, I know on the South Coast as well, for community groups that are trying to train and provide that safety support. We've lost access to buoys all over the coast, and hearing from Jan about nanos is incredibly discouraging. And I just wanted to say that my hope for OPAC is that we will promote and support safety for all ocean users whenever possible. And I know the governor's office, I don't think they are here with us today, but however we can bug them to promote safety and science, I hope we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. I'm losing my voice. Good grief. I haven't even been talking today. Good points, and yeah, keep those thoughts in mind as we get into discussion. Jan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just reply to Amelia. Thank you so much for that. You know, I mentioned that 20-minute long video, and we took out quotes from that when we went to the Hill, to the DC to visit our delegation. And I just randomly got those. You know, we picked out a dozen. 8 of them actually mentioned the word safety, and it was in different contexts, right? You know, some of it is like, if you're going to go in your boat, or if you're going to go on your windsurfer, if you're going to eat shellfish, if you're going to evacuate from the tsunami. But safety is such a key message. And I know that that resonates across the aisle, and that's where we really need to emphasize safety and healthy economies. Those have to be bipartisan issues. And so, yeah, I just really appreciate your comment. I think it's spot on.
Thank you, Jan. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to, like everybody else, thank you all for your discussion today. That information, the detail of it was really, well, it was sobering. And I'm struggling to think, like, how can OPAC help. I mean, it sounds like you already reached out to the governor's office, but what I envision is, well, first of all, checking in with Steve Shipsey about what we can do. But I would like to think that since we are an advisory body to the governor's office, we can encapsulate some of what was, or a lot of what was said succinctly by all you panelists, and have some type of letter to the governor's office to really stress the need on our coast for doing everything we can do to safeguard these programs and this work. And I don't know where that goes from there. I mean, the governor's office, I don't know how they can reach out federally, but yeah, so I'm struggling to think of the best way to move forward, but I think we do need to do something. But I will stop there.
Thank you, Joe. I agree. I think we should do something. And like I said, we have, I know Tara and I have talked a little bit, some ideas, so we can get into that. Karina, I'll go to you. I also want to say thank you for identifying some of the panelists to speak to us today. I know that was, getting them together was due in large part to you, so thank you for that. So go ahead.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for letting me bring this topic and the speaker, inviting these speakers. I don't think this is there are some strategies that may be more effective or augment outreach to the governor's office. OPAC is not necessarily the body in which to do that, but I will share that CGRAN and some of our other advocacy organizations, the associations, the nonprofits that are allowed to lobby, have elevated the importance of having industry partners reach out and having perhaps well-placed op-eds, again, by industry partners that might be supportive of the work that we do in these different entities. So I think I'll just share that. I'm not asking OPAC to take any action on it. I just wanted to share some ideas of that might be more effective.
Cool. I appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense too. Are there any other questions real quick before I want to have a brief discussion about what OPAC wants to do with the rest of our day, because I don't want to dominate all your time. So any other questions about the panel before we talk about scheduling a little bit, and then we can go back and talk about what OPAC can or wants to do? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I can find a way to join. Okay, there's some good comments in the chat. Okay, so we have three other things left today. We added some ocean-related federal executive order or actions, a discussion on oil and gas and seabed mining. We added that late in the week, so we can scrap that if you'd like. And then we have officer elections to do, which probably won't take 30 minutes. And then we have recap, meeting scheduling, and wrap up, and also talking about this panel. So I guess I just want to get an idea from OPAC members. What if we scrap the EOs for this time and revisit them in the future? Or reach out to Andy, Tara, and me if you have any questions, and we can at least point you in some direction with some links to what we've been working on. What do you guys think? Don't all speak at once.